The greater good of independence, by and large, by and large, by and large, by and large, by and large. Whether it was kamikazes or suicide bombers, they had one element that many armies don't. They had a commitment to something bigger than themselves, for good or for bad. And they took advantage of others' complacency and their ego. Any of you tell me how many of you jumped up and grabbed your rifles to head to Washington, D.C. on January the 6th? Where was your beloved military and your beloved protectors of a nation? Where was your patriots? I tell you where they were. They were storming the Capitol. They were misleading the mob and leading them away from senators and staff members, working on their own ingenuity and not by someone's guidance. They were standing up against the mob, almost certain that no one was coming anytime soon, but willing to sacrifice to hold the line. In other words, they were the ones by and large being forgotten about as we speak. Republican leaders will not come to the aid of the mob, and the Democrats won't vehemently defend or demand answers for the protectors, even from themselves. They are now working to make propaganda for Donald Trump by believing the lies of Donald Trump. You see, if anything, Donald Trump is consistently repetitive though contradictive. Besides, contradiction is a skill of both parties, and very few people of any group are free of the weakness called hypocrisy. As uninformed and naive as Democrats would have you believe conservatives are, that's neither here nor there. They're committed to something, while the rest of America is just saying to itself, man, I just work here. Sure, they'll drink their beer and they'll barbecue on 4th of July. But when it comes time to do what is needed, they will pee on themselves while they watch what's important to them stolen. Leaders of an ideology, whether well-intentioned or nefarious, will call for true supporters to commit to their ideas in order to remain devoted. And they must be willing to sacrifice themselves as part of that commitment. I'd bet my bottom dollar that those that fought the terrorists on the plane that went down on 9/11 were probably Republican voters. Just as the majority of military members are Republican voters. And that fits well because they are committed to traditions, God and country, defending family values. Whatever it is, they are committed to defending a well-defined and well-established set of beliefs irregardless of what anyone thinks about it. Democrats have become a soup of ever-changing ideas to the point that it has no real defined logical reasoning. It has more or less a pacifist, come one come all, attitude in order not to offend anyone. The so-called liberals have become ones that will follow a trend, often wearing a bumper sticker mentality t-shirt with a catchy saying on it, never really truly understanding the depth of what the saying means or the philosophy it represents. The modern-day liberal is more apt to rally for any given cause more or less as a thought for the day that seems to change on an almost daily basis. Thus they inevitably end up rendering their devotion to any given cause as shallow and superficial. Those who are committed to something don't much care about offending anyone, if they have to defend that which is precious to them. A strong commitment to any idea requires disciplined devotion to a repetitive and reassuring guarantee to serve that idea, whether it is a requirement of one's own self-discovered ideals, or defined and required by the ideals of others. Republicans actually do believe in the body of a government, albeit from the state level, not the federal level. Republicans would be more likely to revolt against a singular body such as the federal government. That is why they tout states' rights. This is something Democrats used to believe in the 1800s as well. But this isn't the 1800s. Ironically, this has allowed a situation where by and large, states have demanded their rights to govern themselves until they no longer can, and then like a teenager go running back to the parent when they realize it's not as easy as they thought. We saw this after Hurricane Katrina, the Gulf oil spill, and now the pandemic. And the Republican part of the federal government is always more than glad to open the door for them. Because the Republican Party has no problem with the federal government having so much control, as long as it is controlled by their ideology. It's a smoke and mirrors and sleight of hand kind of gimmick. And it works well because they have been able to contradict themselves time and time again, even lying to the people and getting no pushback. Democrats mistakenly call this insanity, but that has never stopped any fascism or totalitarianism before. In the end, Republican supporters will feed themselves to the grinder of ideology just as easily as soldiers were fed to the grinder of war during Vietnam. To this day, the people have by and large not held the governing body accountable for leading us into a situation where we forced our people to sacrifice themselves for a political stunt thought up, demanded, and often commanded by the ruling classes. How dare we question our government, and how dare one evade a draft? One who is a true patriot does not question the motives of that which it defends. The liberals simply enjoyed the fruits of that which was being defended by others, sitting around pontificating and singing about the utopia they envisioned. They called this the solution to the hell they knew. But tricking one's mind into ignoring the realities does not make it a reality that doesn't exist. The truth of the matter is, a perfect example of a balance can be seen in the works of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who never let the African American community lose sight of the things that they needed to reflect on within itself. He not only called for African Americans to stand up for their rights, but he challenged them to define what gives them the right to be, and what do they seek to be. The truth of the matter is, statistically, the African American population is by and large a conservative people. They simply have realized that the Republican Party is not one without agendas either, and that trusting any established government 100% in this country is foolhardy, and overall, this is the wisest outlook, albeit one of a growing lack of trust. But who has given them something to trust or to believe in for its sincerity and solidarity? Since being brought to the United States, they have had to fend for themselves and continue to have to fend for themselves. It would seem Americans have never fought for them for the good of their people, rather they have fought in their name so that they can free themselves from their own conscience. The issue of racism and freedoms for minorities has largely been the knot in a tug of war between two ideologies. But for now, as African Americans work to establish their own self-identification free of the American history's narrative and the guidelines it wishes to set, it is probably logical and safer to operate under the understanding that until then, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. They simply need pick the lesser of two evils. Because for now, there is no genuine interest in how they feel, but rather how do their feelings affect our conscience. Democrats believe in what they call democracy, which has really become a philosophy that says we need to find a way to please everybody and let everybody do what they wish without harming the other people's wishes. And we need more regulation and oversight to see that it is working. This is tantamount to a referee making sure the anarchy is played fairly. And so they struggle to maintain order, because in doing so they will surely disenfranchise someone. They struggle to answer the questions whenever they are posed, but why do we do that? Or, why can't we do that? Independents understand that we must remain independent of any one ideology that goes off course of the common shared vision, and whether intentionally or not, enables anybody or any individual to sabotage that vision by creating illusions and confusions. They recognize that, for the good of a country, the country must be willing to fight to remain independent of any social ills, even those of themselves. And to allow for this they refuse to subscribe to any current ideology because they understand ideology itself is its own party. Independents recognize the inherent risk of needing leadership to give us something to believe in. In a society there are two types of law-abiding citizens. There are those who do not break the law because they understand the punishment. Then there are those who do not break the law, because they understand the nature of the law and its purpose. They understand the crime it protects against more than it understands the punishment. The difference between the two is whether there is a presence of a self-discovered conviction that drives a commitment to the greater good, and the greater good is a complicated thing to behold.